There is 1 week to go until Election Day, and Cleveland voters will have a very important decision to make: who will be this city's next mayor and lead Cleveland into the future. Good evening. Thanks for being with us. I am Rob Powers. Welcome to our News 5 Interactive Town Hall. I'm joined by candidates Justin Bibb and Kevin Kelley. Gentlemen, a reminder, this is not a debate. It's a chance for you to answer questions directly from Clevelanders and the journalists here at News 5. Yeah, that's right. For those of you watching on Facebook right now, you can ask questions right in the comments section. We want to cover a lot of ground tonight, so there will be no rebuttals tonight. We start with 2 minutes for each candidate's opening statement. So, gentlemen, if you're ready, Mr. Bibb, we start with you. 2 minutes.
Good evening. I want to first thank Channel 5 for hosting this important conversation as we approach the election. My name is Justin Bibb, and I'm running for mayor because I believe that now is certainly the time for bold, new, dynamic, visionary leadership to move Cleveland forward. I'm a son of the Southeast Side. I grew up on one of the toughest blocks in the city on 121st and Dove, and I've experienced my own fair share of problems and pain that I know many residents are going through right now. I know what it's like to see that eviction notice on my door. I know what it's like to bury too many family members due to violent crime. I know what it's like to see the pain in my uncle's eyes when they struggle to get a house or get a job coming back from prison. But in this election, we have an opportunity to turn that pain into promise. The promise of having a modern and responsive city hall that will better invest in young people and better invest in our seniors. The promise to make sure we can do the hard work of not just having more effective law enforcement, but accountable law enforcement to ensure that every community is safe and secure. And the promise to make sure that every child has a quality school to go to in this city so they can achieve their God-given potential. I've dedicated my life to making cities better, and I'm looking forward to becoming the next mayor to fight for Clevelanders day in and day out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Okay, Mr. Kelley, let's go to you. Your 2 minutes begin now.
Thank you, Rob, and I want to thank you. I want to thank Channel 5 and especially all your viewers for viewing in tonight for this important conversation. My name is Kevin Kelley. My wife and I are raising our 5 beautiful daughters in the old Brooklyn neighborhood. As a young person, I know what it's like to struggle. I've been through a lot of the struggles that Clevelanders have. I know what it's like to grow up on public assistance. I know what it's like to lose a family home to foreclosure. But I also know what it's like to lean on those and work with others around you to persevere. Tonight, I'm asking for your vote to run, as your next mayor of the city of Cleveland. And I want to just stress the urgency of this time right now. There is 1 week left until this very important decision will be in front of all of us. And I want to ask all the viewers that it's really time to scrutinize the statements, scrutinize the candidates. We need to look beyond platitudes. We need to look beyond buzzwords and ask a really important question. Who do we trust to do this very important job? I bring an unmatched record of accomplishment to this position, both as a social worker and as a councilman, as a president of Cleveland City Council. As a social worker, I've started programs from the ground up. On Cleveland City Council, I brought Wi-Fi to the neighborhood of Old Brooklyn that I represent. And as council president, I've worked at the challenging problems of reducing infant mortality, lead poisoning, providing right to counsel attorneys for people that are faced with evictions, and putting money behind those programs. We are in a fragile place right now in Cleveland. We have a surge of violent crime. We have a surge where our economy is in a very difficult place right now. We have to make sure that we have a mayor that knows how to do government, knows how to make things right on day one. And again, let me stress, as we move forward, crime and safety is our most important issue that we face. If we do not get this right, nothing else that we do will matter. Thank you very much.
Okay, gentlemen, and we are off. Thank you for your opening statements. Let's move on now with viewer questions. Each one of you will have 1 minute to respond to these questions. We start with this, issue 24 from a News 5 viewer.
Hi, my name is Brian Mallory, and I'm a public housing resident, CMHA, in Ohio City. And my question to the candidates is issue 24. I'm very much want to know where they stand on that.
And Mr. Kelley, you're first to respond. Your stance on issue 24.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to take a step back. This is a bit of a defining issue in this campaign. Because there's a mayor's race, and of course it's something we need to take a position on. But we need to look at this for what it is. Has to transcend politics. It has to be more important than politics. This is about neighborhood safety. And right now, when we are at a point where we have a surge in violent crime, we cannot afford to lose any more officers. I am not supporting issue 24 because I believe it will make our neighborhoods less safe. The hardest thing we do is try to recruit and retain officers. And this will make that even harder. It will take money that should be going for neighborhood safety programs and take it away from that and put it to a board of political appointees. This really is, of everything that's been talked about, of everything that my opponent has mentioned, this is the only substantive issue that he has taken a stand on, and it's the wrong stand. I am against issue 24 because I believe our neighborhood safety would suffer.
And Mr. Bibb, your chance to respond.
I support issue 24. This is personal for me. I'm a son of a cop, and I remember vividly having hard conversations with my father about how to approach getting pulled over by policemen or policewomen. And all across the city, there is a dramatic lack of trust between police and residents. Over the last 10 years, we spent over $30 million settling police misconduct claims. And the way we police our communities right now is broken. Issue 24 allows more community voices around the table in partnership with law enforcement to make sure we get the right training and right culture in place to restore trust between police and residents. It's the right thing to do. I would also say this is not defunding the police. We have to stop making a false choice of having accountable law enforcement and good policing. We can and must do both. That's why I support issue 24.
Okay, we stick with law enforcement here. Eric is watching right now on Facebook. Eric, thanks for being with us. And he asks, what concrete plans do you have to make Cleveland a safer city? Mr. Bibb, we begin this question with you.
Number one, I intend to hire a new police chief to reset the tone and change the culture of our police department, because right now morale is at an all-time low. Number two, we got to pay our cops more. We're losing so many of our officers out of the academy. They're going to other suburban cities in our county right now, so paying them more is essential. I would also say this, we have to make sure they have the equipment they need to fight crime all across our city. But long term, we must do the hard work of truly reimagining policing. That requires adding a fourth option to 911 around mental health. It also requires having a co-responder model of policing where social workers and mental health professionals can join our officers for nonviolent 911 calls. That's how we address the root cause of violent crime all across our city.
Mr. Kelley, plans to make Cleveland a safer city.
Thank you. My three pillars are this. We need to make sure first that we are giving the police the tools that they need, the training that they need. Make sure we hire at the rate the council has budgeted for. Make sure we have full staffing in our specialty units, our homicide detectives, our sex crimes unit, our domestic violence. Next, we need to make sure that community policing is true community policing. We'll have foot patrols, bike patrols in every neighborhood, neighborhood mini stations. We'll have true community relations committees in all 5 districts. And finally, we need to make sure that we're dealing with the root causes of crime, which are poverty, hopelessness, disinvestment. But again, we cannot take dollars from neighborhood police services. In issue 24, the defund amendment does defund the police. That's what it says in the amendment. You take a percentage of the police budget and you give it to somewhere else. We're not in a position to do that. We need to make sure that we fully fund the police for all of the important activities that they need to do.
Okay, we go back outside the building now. We take another question from a News 5 viewer.
My name is Akshay Singh. I live in the University Circle neighborhood. My question is, how are you going to help expand transit to the folks who most need it?
Okay, Mr. Kelley, you're first here, making public transit accessible for those who need it.
Sure. So Greater Cleveland RTA has not succeeded in making sure that we are providing transit to those that need it. And we have to stop thinking of these as routes or dollars. These are people who need access to their jobs, people who need access to the grocery store. And we just have not completed that. We need to look beyond Greater Cleveland RTA. We need to look at different transportation options. For example, in Cleveland City Council, we fund the senior transportation connection. And we can put more money in that to give more rides to more people. But until something dramatic happens with Greater Cleveland RTA, public transit is not something that I think people should look for a solution in the short term. We need to find a workaround to RTA. We need to find other transportation options to help people get to where they need to be.
Mr. Bibb, your answer, making public transit accessible for those who need it.
Having high quality, equitable, and accessible public transit is the backbone of what makes cities great. And it is important that the next mayor work in partnership with RTA to address that need. I've served on the board of RTA for nearly 3 years, and I understand that they had to make some tough choices, given the fact that this governor and state legislature has not given cities like Cleveland its fair share of public transit dollars. So that would be a major priority for me to make sure we get our fair share in the state legislature. I would also say this: it's past time we explore alternative local models to invest in local transit. That's why I support looking at finally bringing smart parking meters to downtown as a way to enhance that revenue source. That's why I support alternative revenue models that you see in Cincinnati that will find long-term revenue streams to support local transit. We can and must do this long-term in our city.
Gentlemen, we turn now to experience. It's a two-part question. For Mr. Bibb, what work experience do you have that makes you qualified to be the mayor of Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, I had the privilege of spending nearly 5 years leading 2 businesses at the global research consulting company Gallup. The first business working with school districts and foundations across the country. The second business working with mayors across the country. And working with those mayors, I learned the importance of using resident voice to improve basic city services. And in my job right now at Urban Nova as the Chief Strategy Officer, I'm working with mid-sized communities all across the country on how to better bring communities together and have new solutions to those respective problems. I also spent nearly 3 years in financial services. At Key Bank, I supported a $1.7 billion business, helping them to make very smart choices about the long-term growth of Key Bank. And is that executive experience, but my lived experience as a kid from the Southeast side, I'm going to bring on day one as the next mayor.
Mr. Kelley, you have experience for years in city council. What do you say to people who think the city under that leadership is now headed in the wrong direction?
I would say that I was elected to be the president of Cleveland City Council, and a strong leader works with those that are elected by the people to drive results. And that's what I've done. I've had a working relationship with the mayor, but the challenges now facing our generation are different. And I've shown through the leadership that I have, position that I've been in, how do you invest in underserved neighborhoods? How do you drive dollars to where the private sector has ignored? How do you look at public health crises like infant mortality and lead poisoning? Build coalitions, bring people together and find the dollars. It is the choice couldn't be clearer in terms of experience. It's the experience that was just mentioned. I mean, the gentleman hasn't held a full-time job for 2 full years. This is hard work. This is not something that you go from job to job. If you ask people this far in the campaign, what is the history of professional accomplishment between the 2 candidates? I would ask all your viewers to look very closely at that issue.
Okay, let's get back to our viewers right now as we shift to utility shutoffs. Mr. Kelley, you'll lead off on this one. Here's the question.
Hi, my name's Stephanie, and I'm the Ohio City kiddo. And I want to know, as mayor, will you commit to enacting a moratorium on utility shutoffs?
Will you commit to a moratorium on utility shutoffs? Mr. Kelley, you're first.
Thank you. When you're in these positions, when you're in leadership positions, sometimes you have to make decisions that might disappoint people. I will not commit to that because it's not responsible. There are many people that can pay their utilities, generally slum landlords, that don't. I'm very pleased with the fact that we as a city, when COVID hit, we did do a moratorium on utility shutoffs. Not only did we do a moratorium, but we put back on families that were cut off. But if we just did a moratorium, the people who would take advantage are the slum landlords that are already ravaging our community. They're already not investing in our community. It wouldn't be those families. But if you look at what has the city done in response to COVID, I'm very pleased of the responsible use of moratoriums on shutoffs and reconnecting people that didn't have them. But in terms of a blanket moratorium, no, I will not commit to that.
Mr. Bibb, Stephanie's question was, will you commit to a moratorium on utility shutoffs?
Well, the moratorium for utility shutoffs was the right thing to do in the short term as we were going through COVID-19, and I think it's a good short-term solution. However, long-term, we must, as a city, reassess how we support our low-income customers to address their utility burden that we see all across the city. One thing we should look at is more targeted income-based repayment plans to support low-income customers in our community. The other thing we need to do a better job of in Cleveland is finally investing in smart energy. And so that energy usage is only billed based on what you use. And technology can play a large role to long-term reduce the utility burden of low-income customers so that we don't even have to have a conversation about a moratorium. And creating an economy where we have a thriving middle class is also essential to that as well.
Okay, our viewers are coming up with questions. Now we have a few of our own. This is a unique time in our history because of our pandemic. Your stance on a vaccine mandate. Mr. Bibb, you're up.
Well, listen, as mayor, I'm going to encourage everybody in the city of Cleveland, and especially our essential workers that work in City Hall, to get the vaccine and create incentives for them to do so. And we must make it easy for them to do so. I remember when I was at the Wolstein Center, I had 2 City Hall employees say what was going on in there because they didn't even know that they could actually get access to the vaccine. We must trust the science. We must communicate the importance of getting the vaccine and getting the shot because that's the surest thing we can do to get our economy moving again out of this pandemic.
Mr. Kelley, your turn. Your stance on a vaccine mandate.
Thank you. I see what COVID-19 has done on a very up close and personal basis, in addition to looking at the public health crisis that it's caused, how it has hurt our economy. I see what it's done to the city's budget every day. But my wife is also a nurse and sees what is happening with this Delta variant and just really sees that this is not over. We're far from over. The vaccine is the most important tool that we have against this. And we need to make sure going forward, as mayor, I'm going to make sure, hopefully we'll be in a better place by January, but we won't be. It's not going to be over. We need to make sure that we are offering the vaccine in libraries, in churches, and at a hyper-local level, at rec centers, and making sure that it is more convenient for people than the Wolstein Center was, making sure it is right where people live, and really making it so that there is really no excuse not to be vaccinated.
We have heard from viewers out on the street. We've heard some questions from us here at News 5. Now, a reminder that there are people watching right now online and on Facebook. Justin is one of them, and he asks this. As mayor, would you work with allies around the state to lift the statewide preemption on raising the minimum wage? Let that sink in. Mr. Kelley, you're up.
So the question is, would I work with?
Would you work with allies around the state to lift the statewide preemption on raising the minimum wage?
What I would do as mayor is I would work with allies to raise the minimum wage on a statewide level. And it has to be a statewide level. I wouldn't support a Cleveland-only minimum wage, but just as I believe it was in 2008, I worked with the AFL-CIO and there was a statewide initiative to raise the minimum wage. And that is the approach that we need to take. We have to work to make it a statewide initiative or a federal initiative, but it can't be Cleveland only because we have to think about how does that affect the city of Cleveland? How does that affect jobs? How does that affect grocery stores? How does that affect manufacturing plants? But again, it's partnering, it's working with people to make this a statewide or a federal issue. And I'm very pleased that the city of Cleveland raised all of its employees to a minimum of $15 an hour.
Mr. Bibb, lifting the statewide preemption on raising the minimum wage.
Absolutely. We are the poorest big city in America right now. Last year, 7 out of 10 of families had to use a food pantry, and making sure that every resident in this city has a high middle class wage is essential. And as mayor, I intend to finally join the Ohio Mayor's Alliance that Cleveland is not a part of to make sure we can invest in policies like increasing the minimum wage to ensure we can make that real in Cleveland. And as mayor, I'm going to commit to making sure that when residents vote and want to get their say on the ballot on issues like the minimum wage, that I'm not going to deny their ability to vote on these issues because their voice matters beyond an election cycle, in my opinion.
We go back outside, Mr. Bibb. We stay with you for this question. This question comes to us from Lou. The topic, Cleveland neighborhoods.
Homeless people and low-income people, the population growing bigger and bigger. However, all the developmental projects are all for high-end to gentrify the neighborhoods. What would you do about that?
The gentrification of Cleveland neighborhoods. Mr. Bibb.
You got to love the passion from activists like Lou. She's fantastic. Look, I've said throughout this campaign that for far too long in Cleveland, we've had a one-size-fits-all approach to economic development, and it's not working. And that's why I fully believe in a hyper-local approach to make sure that we are deploying the right tools and right incentives inside City Hall to spur more inclusive economic development. That's going to require reimagining our tax abatement policy to spur more investments in affordable and workforce housing. It's also going to require targeted investments to bring back many of our forgotten neighborhoods, particularly in the southeast side, Lee Harvard, Mount Pleasant, and Buckeye, because they deserve to see cranes in the sky in their neighborhoods like we see in parts of the west side and downtown.
Mr. Kelley.
Thank you. For decades, the private sector has intentionally disinvested in many of our neighborhoods. We have taken steps that provide a model for how we continue to put investment in underserved neighborhoods. Just for example, if you look at the one project is 121 Larchmere, where we put money towards workforce housing, not the very high-end housing, but we're trying to build housing in the city of Cleveland that people can afford. And that has been about the last 4 projects that we've approved. It's been that concept of building housing that people can afford. As of the question about gentrification, I have also been working with my colleagues on coming up with a plan to cap the property tax increases in neighborhoods where property values skyrocket. We do not have the authority locally, but the state has a bill that has been introduced that would do this, and I sponsored a resolution that the minute it becomes law, we will cap property taxes for long-time owner-occupied properties.
Okay, gentlemen, I came up with this question. We were just bouncing questions off each other upstairs, and this is what I want to know. I think everybody needs to face it right now, the apathy of Cleveland voters, and we just saw it in the primary. What do you do to reverse that and just get more people engaged in the process, get more people to want to be engaged in the process? Mr. Kelley, you're up.
So as a candidate for office, you want just that. You want people to show up. You want more voters to to participate in the process. But you got to give people hope. You got to give people a reason to believe, to want to come out. And I think when you look across the city, there's a lot of people that are hurting right now. And if you're working to put food on your table, and if you're hustling between jobs, and you're struggling, voting is not, might not be your first priority. Taking care of your family is. But I think we really need to look at how do we do a better job of, including people in the process. How do we make sure that we're giving people a reason to believe in their government? We saw, I was anyhow, most people are shocked in 2020 when we saw just how low that voter turnout was compared to, other similar cities across the nation. The fact that we had just 16% in the primary is an indication. Hopefully we're able to get that up, but every candidate wants more voter participation.
Mr. Bibb, how do we boost that?
We don't just have voter suppression in Cleveland, we have a voter depression. The reason is that for far too long, residents have felt like they haven't had a voice in how we govern our city. And I've experienced this as a candidate for mayor. And the best way I believe we can change the trajectory of getting people more involved in democracy is doing the hard work of building democracy when it's not an election cycle. I hosted over 300 meet and greets as a first-time candidate. I've taken over 3,000 questions. We engage over 100 young people in a grassroots coalition called Students for Bibb that are knocking on doors and are excited about the future. It's that kind of work of meeting voters where they are, when it's not convenient, by the way, that I believe will help us turn the page to get people more involved and more excited that government is going to work for them.
Again, people watching right now on Facebook, that includes Yolanda. Yolanda has this question: what are your plans to increase enrollment and academic achievement for Cleveland schools? Mr. Bibb, you're up.
Well, I think we have a fantastic educational ecosystem to build on in Cleveland. I believe the Cleveland Plan was a good step in the right direction. We have exciting investments with projects like Say Yes to Education. But fundamentally, I think we need to do a better job of hiring and attracting more teachers of color inside CMSD. We also need more investments in high quality after-school programs for many of our young people. And it is certainly now the time to really do a better job of connecting K through 12 education to our workforce development system to prepare our young people for jobs of the future. That's why I want to encourage kids in elementary school and middle school, so by the time that they're a junior or senior in high school, they can get a year-round apprenticeship or an internship and have a straight-to-work pathway when they graduate from CMSD. That's how you change public education long-term in Cleveland.
Mr. Kelley.
Thank you. We need to make sure that we have a system of education that serves every neighborhood and every family in Cleveland. I am a CMSD dad, and I really see the potential. I see what can happen. I really believe in every one of our scholars. And I believe the best path to really giving them hope, is through Say Yes to Education. We need to do a better job of promoting this to our scholars and their parents to let them know that yes, in Cleveland, Ohio, if you graduate from CMSD, you can have your bachelor's degree paid for. You come out debt-free, your associate's degree, your apprenticeship program. But we need to start back in 5th, 6th grade. We need to start talking about career education and readiness, not in the 11th and 12th grade, but in the 5th and 6th grade. Because I see the biggest fundamental challenge of our economy is that we have these thousands of open, available, high-paying jobs, but our workforce, our students, our scholars are not properly educated, skilled, and trained to take them. Now is the time to fix that problem.
I think we did some good here. As we wrap up, we'd like to give both candidates now 2 minutes each for a final pitch telling you, speaking directly to you, why one of them should be Cleveland's next mayor. We started with Mr. Bibb at the top of the hour, so as we close, we start with Mr. Kelley. Your 2 minutes begin now.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for listening and participating and for your questions, and just thanks for caring enough to be involved. I want to be mayor because I believe that our best days lie ahead of us. I'm aware of the challenges. I'm aware of the surge in violent crime. I see the food insecurity every day when I see cars lining up at Muni Lot to get their allotment from the food bank. I understand that this COVID has hurt the people that were hurting the most. Before COVID, it hurt them the worst, and they're having the hardest time clawing out of this. We have to make sure that we're doing that. We have to make sure that we are tending to their needs, making sure that we are driving investment to underserved neighborhoods. We need to make sure that we end the digital divide once and for all and not stop talking about it like we've done in the old Brooklyn neighborhood over 10 years ago. When I'm mayor, your health outcomes will not be determined by your zip code. And right now they are. We're going to take the same approach that we did in Old Brooklyn and make sure that we treat public health as a community development issue. We're going to ask questions of where do you live within a 10-minute walk of a park? Do you have access to fresh food? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Do you know your neighbors to the left and right? Do you have a job? But I want to say this as I close. Nothing that we do in terms of neighborhood development, nothing we do in terms of trying to deal with food insecurity are really going to matter if we do not deal with this safety issue. If Clevelanders do not feel safe in their homes, on their streets, and in their neighborhoods, nothing else we do will matter. And that's why it is critical that I ask every one of your viewers, everybody who is paying attention right now, to really scrutinize, who is better equipped to deal with safety, who is better equipped to instill community policing. And again, we cannot, if you look at the only defining issue, it is who supported the defund the police amendment. I do not support it. It will lead to less safe neighborhoods, and we need safe neighborhoods now.
Mr. Bibb, the voters are watching right now. 2 minutes to state your case to the city of Cleveland.
This election will be the most important election, I believe, in Cleveland's history. And there's a clear choice. Do we believe in the failed politics of the past that will continue to prey on our fears, to tell us that we can't do big things, to tell us that we can't be innovative, to tell us that we can't be courageous to think differently about how to tackle some of these vexing issues that have plagued our city for far too long? I believe on the ballot on November 2nd, we have an opportunity to turn the page. We can turn the page to do the hard work of not just having more effective law enforcement that keeps our community safe and secure, but also do the real work to make sure that every resident gets equal justice under the law, because without trust, we don't get safety. In this election, we can turn the page to have a modern and responsive City Hall that's going to fight for our seniors, invest in our young people, and return your call when you call the mayor's office. And in this election, we can and must do the hard work to finally make sure we have an equitable public school district that serves our students. Now, I may be new to politics as an upstart candidate, but I'm not new to Cleveland. And I know that the ways we've been doing business must change because we are living in what Dr. King calls the fierce urgency of now. But now is the time to turn the page. And now is the time to be that city of opportunity that can work for everybody. I'm going to choose hope over fear, and I'm going to choose creating a fresh page in this election, and I hope you will do the same thing as well come November 2nd. That's why I'm the best leader to lead this city moving forward. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much. It is just past 7:30. 1 week from now, all the votes will be cast, the polls will be closed. One of these two men will be Cleveland's next mayor. Gentlemen, we wish you luck. To both of you, good luck moving forward. And thank you to our viewers for taking part in tonight's interactive town hall. Thank you so much. We're going to have much more tonight on News 5 at 11. And of course, Tuesday, November 2nd, when the results roll in on election night. Until then, I'm Rob Powers. Please make it a good night.